Without further ado, hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here at the beautiful Cal's Ron Robinson Theater tonight here in beautiful downtown Little Rock. I'm Daniel Breen. I am the news director of Little Rock Public Radio, a service of UA Little Rock, and I am very pleased to welcome you all to tonight's forum featuring candidates for Chief Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court. Before we introduce our candidates, I would like to first thank the Central Arkansas Library System, both for providing us this lovely venue tonight and for taking care of all the technical aspects of tonight's program. I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, which is also partnering with us on tonight's event. And I'll just give a brief rundown of the structure of our conversation. Tonight, we'll be hearing a 1-minute opening statement from each of our candidates. Then we will move on to our questions for the evening. Candidates have received our questions in advance, and we will have some time toward the end of our program for questions from the audience. Then we will hear a 1-minute closing statement from each of our candidates. I think a lot of you have already probably written down questions and given them back to a League of Women Voters staffer. If you haven't done that already, feel free to go get a blank one, write down your question. About 10 minutes in, I'll give you a reminder, and League staffers will come through. If you could just pass them to the end of your rows, and we will get those to me, and we will have time once again at the end. And the order in which our candidates are speaking tonight was decided randomly just before our show began. I will introduce our candidates in the order that they will be answering questions in all evening. Please welcome to the stage our candidates for Chief Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court. In the order you see directly to my left, we have Supreme Court Associate Justice Karen Baker. To her left, we have Associate Justice Rhonda Wood. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's give them a round of applause, shall we? All right, well, I think that's all I have for now. Without further ado, let's get right into it, into opening statements. Justice Karen Baker, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Justice Karen Baker. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you and share some insights, hopefully, about the court. To introduce myself is hard. If I go home to my home county in Clinton, Van Buren County, I'm known by a different name. I'm Renee there, and I'm Karen when I go to work. And my last name changes too. It's Baker, but it's also Hogue. So I decided for the ballot when I ran for the first time in 1996 that we would put just Karen Baker. Plain and simple, simplest way to put it. So in the last election, I would say the people that know me best are the people in Van Buren County. And they voted for me over 70%. Only 900 people voted the other way, and they were just confused. And so we understand that. Sometimes people get confused, but I think they know me best, and I'll take that as a recommendation for you, that I'm trustworthy to do the chief's job, the Chief Justice job. And I know pretty much what it entails.
Right.
So.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Wood, and it is my honor to be one of the justices on the Arkansas Supreme Court. I want to thank NPR and the League of Women Voters for hosting this event to find out more about the candidates. I have served as a judge in Arkansas for 18 years. I've been honored to be elected 4 times in the state of Arkansas. I served 6 years on the trial court, 2 on the intermediate court, and I'm in my 10th year on the Arkansas Supreme Court. I am uniquely prepared to lead, and I have the relevant judicial leadership experience to be your Chief Justice. I am a working mom. I went to law school with 4 kids. That tells you I'm not afraid of hard work. 25 years ago, and those kids now have given me grandchildren, and I daily am ready to go as your Chief Justice. I lead the court in automation, so I understand the unique changes in technology and how to improve our court system with that. And I'm just here to ask for your vote and tell you that I have been your public servant for 18 years, and I'd like to do that for another 8 years as your Chief Justice on March 5th.
We will get right into our questions this evening, starting with you, Justice Baker. Tell us the top 2 areas you think need the most improvement in Arkansas's court system.
The 2 areas. And we got these questions, yesterday, and I thought about the answer to this one. What is the most important areas? And I'll tell you that my focus for the past 24 years has been, well, longer than that actually, has been assuring that we have a competent bar and that it is able to serve the communities in Arkansas, and that we are doing what we can to serve the Arkansas people. And sometimes that takes thoughts about who should be licensed and who should not. And frankly, the one area that the Constitution directs us to deal with the attorney's licensure, we're not doing a good job. In my opinion, we've had some leadership mistakes in the past, and they have continued and are causing problems to this day with how we allocate money from our license fees. And I think that the problems need to be addressed, and I think we need to allocate more money for JLAT. I've been advocating for attorney mental health, and I hope that we're succeeding to some extent with that, but we don't have the funding we need. So that is an area. Those are 2 areas I would focus on.
All right, thank you, Justice Baker. Justice Wood, again, the question, what are the top 2 areas you think need the most improvement in Arkansas's court system?
So I think, to me, the biggest problems are transparency and access to the court. And so transparency is that people are afraid of the court. They are not educated. They do not know how the court system works, and therefore they're afraid to utilize the court system to solve their problems. And that leads into then accessing the court and having that ability to use the court system. That's because day one, I rolled out my priorities as Chief Justice, and I said I was going to improve that and make it so that our rules were simplified and that we improved transparency and access to the court. I've done that for the last 4 years, just on my own initiative. I started a podcast, and all I do is record episodes on how their state courts work to just provide that civic education and access to the court system. And I appreciate Justice Webb is interested in technology. I've been the court liaison in technology, and we are rolling out text to notifications of hearings. We are utilizing that, and I've been leading the court in that for the last 4 years. And very excited about what we're doing in that respect. And we've moved court reporting, we're moving it digitally and all of that. So I'm glad that my colleagues are excited about that work as well.
Thank you, Justice Wood. And just a reminder, if you all have question cards that you filled out, we will have League of Women Voters of Pulaski County staffers come through to collect those right now. If you all just pass them down to the end of the row, we'll have some time at the end of our program for that. Moving on to our next question this evening, what is the most common misconception among Arkansans about the courts? And Justice Baker, let's start.
Well, there's misconceptions about the courts generally. Most citizens don't come in contact with the courts, and thank goodness they don't. But we have problems where they access the court, and it is in municipal court, district court. I have trouble remembering district court. And my son's running for district judge, and I still have trouble remembering not to say municipal court anymore. But we need to make that court transparent as possible. And the other courts as well, but I'm not as worried about the other courts because we have a record in them, and we don't have a record in municipal courts. And I think we need to address that as well in some manner. And I've talked about problems that I see there with the court. The other thing is, I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, but please don't send me another novice to train. I've been on the court 14 years. We don't suffer from a lack of outside perspective. we have new justices coming on all the time, and we'll have another new justice. And it takes the court a while to work out what's going on and learn to work collaboratively together, which is harder than you think. You'll have, well, maybe you think you have an opinion ready to go down, and there's one sentence in it that somebody says, if that's in it, I absolutely won't join it. And so you have to look and see and consider and whether that's important to the decision, whether you can change it. It's how we work. It's how the court works. And what we're trying to do is produce a product for the people of Arkansas. And that product is justice. And that's our function, the rule of law in Arkansas. And the Chief Justice is the top leader of the courts. And I think it's very important that it be someone that is experienced. And I think I'm the most experienced candidate. I think they won't argue with that. I recognize that Barbara has administrative talents that I'd like to take advantage of. And I realize that Rhonda has a lot of talent in the area of technology, but she's suffering from what we've suffered from for a long time. We've got a legacy system that we're trying to improve, and we're trying to roll out new products, but we're tied to an ancient database. You can get a better database probably for free, but so we need to address that, and it's been an ongoing problem for many years, and it's one that I hope that we'll be able to address with the coming court. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Wood?
So I think the biggest misperception is that people think the court and the justice system is there to create problems in their lives rather than solve problems in their lives. So when they think about going to court or getting involved in the court, they see it as this is going to be, burdensome, creating havoc in their life, and they're scared and they're fearful, rather than, seeing it as we're here to solve problems. And I do a lot of teaching. I was a former law professor, and I go out and talk to judges and teach around the state. And I say, we are in the public service industry, and it is a mindset change. And that's what I want to do as Chief Justice, is continue doing that, and to make sure every court, every judge, every staff person understands we are public servants, and we are there as public service industries. We are there to say, how do we make it easier for you to solve your problems when you need us? And from the minute you walk in the court, it should be as simple as when you walk in the door, you should know where to go. You should be easy access. Where do I go? Where do I go to file? How do I get there? How do I solve my problems? And we are there to assist you rather than to set up barriers to solving your problems. And that's what I want to do as Chief Justice, is just change our understanding of why we're there, and that we're there to serve the public.
Thank you, Justice Wood. Our next question for you again, Justice Baker. What would your priorities be as Chief Administrator of the court system in your role as Chief Justice?
I think it's important that our courts focus on separation of powers. And so I think we should focus on that and focus on our job. So top priorities would be to make sure that we're doing what we should to help the bench and bar with the licensure fees. When we get the fees, we should be providing to them a service, and I don't think we're doing that in every case. So I want to extend and grow that program, and I think we've shown that there's a need. Once again, returning to JLAP. Rhonda and Barbara are tired of hearing this, but I am very committed to that program, and I think the mental health of our judges and lawyers is probably my most important priority.
Thank you, Justice Baker. Justice Wood, and again, the question, what would your priorities be as the chief administrator of the court system as Chief Justice?
So certainly, and I put my priorities out day one on my website, which is woodforjustice.com. One of them, it's, current theme is simplify the court process. That's one of the first things. I'm going to still do my role as a justice on the court, but we have to simplify the process and the court rules. And I would like to immediately have a task force to say, how can we simplify? Most citizens are in district courts. How can we simplify that process for them and deal with that? The second thing I want to do is utilizing technology. I have some detailed ideas about how to utilize that to make it an easier path for victims of human trafficking and domestic violence. There are some things that other states have done through their Supreme Court and Administrative Office of the Court that Arkansas needs to take the lead and do that as well. And third, I have worked tirelessly for 18 years and 10 years as chair as the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families on Juvenile Justice Reform. And so that is near and dear to my heart, and that will be one of my 3 priorities to continue working on juvenile justice reform. Part of the kiosk that Justice Webb mentioned came through grant funding that comes through my commission, that we were able to roll that out so that parents and children could have access to filings and information in all the counties. And I was so thrilled to work on that over the last 10 years. So that is, one of my goals, because that changes. If we can make reform in juvenile justice and in child welfare, that affects generations to come. So that is one of my 3 goals.
Thank you, Justice Wood. Moving to our next question this evening, stemming off a little bit from our previous question, how would you balance those administrative duties with also serving as an active justice on the High Court? Justice Baker.
Well, I've been the acting Chief Justice on the court for the last 8 years because I'm the senior justice on the court. Meaning the senior justice is the person who has served the longest. So I'm the senior justice, and I have been for 8 years. And I act as the Chief Justice whenever the Chief Justice cannot sit on a case, has to recuse from a case. That's happened 31 times since I've been on the court as senior justice. And I've handled all of those cases and my current workload without any problem. I think I will be able to do the same in the chief's role. It's really about learning how to allocate your time. And I think I've demonstrated an ability to do that.
All right. Thank you, Justice Baker. Justice Wood.
So I think I said in my opening, I went to law school with 4 children in elementary school. So I'll be honest with you, I think anything else is cakewalk after that. I promise you. No, I feel like I've managed being a justice on the court. I chair more committees than any other justice on the court. I chair 5 committees currently. I've served on 11 committees during my tenure, my 10 years on the court. I am 100%, you pay my payroll. I'm a public service servant. I feel honored and privileged to be a public servant. So I am not just about, putting on the robe and sitting on the bench. I am there day in, day out, whether it's nighttime. When I was in Faulkner County, I did the bench all day. I showed up early and ran a juvenile drug court, pre-court, and I stayed every Monday night and ran a teen court till 10 o'clock at night. That was with 3 kids in high school. So I know how to time management, I know how to prioritize, and I know that I'm there to serve the public, and I do not take that lightly. And I am more than willing and able and ready day one to be your Chief Justice. If you would just, I'd be so honored if you give me that opportunity.
Thank you, Justice Wood. We are nearing the end of our program this evening. Our last question before we move on to questions from our audience members tonight. Touched on this a little bit, separation of powers. So starting with you again, Justice Baker, how do you envision the court's relationship with the executive and legislative branches of government?
Separate, but equal. That's how I envision the courts operating with the other branches of government. Separately, but equal to them. We are, as a court, equal to the governor or anything in the executive branch. We are equal to the legislature and everything in the legislative branch. And I don't think we always recognize that, but it is true and it is part of our system and it is necessary that we maintain separation of powers. If we don't, if we are not able, the court doesn't have an army of policemen to enforce its orders. The executive branch has to enforce our orders. So we have to rely on them to enforce our orders. We don't make the law, usually. Sometimes we do in common law cases, but usually we don't make the law. And we don't want to. That's the legislature's job. Let them do that. We do speak the law. We do interpret it. And we do say whether it applies to a certain set of facts or not. The most important thing is the rule of law. And I believe it's true for the other branches of government as well. It's the first duty of the, I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either, sorry. Yeah, if you could silence your cell phones, please, we'd appreciate that.
Where was I? The separation of powers is very important because the first duty of the legislative branch is to fund the administration of justice. So it's important for them to fund it. It's important for us then to speak the law, to say what it is, to announce through our opinions. The court speaks through our opinions. And while I'll agree with Justice Wood to an extent about social media, I'm definitely more conservative than she is with regard to that. But no matter how we interact with the public, with the other branches of government, we have to be separate but equal and maintain our authority under the Constitution. That's the most important thing in my view that there is. And if we lose that, we lose our country. So it's the most important thing that there is. And I'm determined to see that we keep the separation of powers.
Thank you, Justice Baker. Justice Wood, again, the question, how do you foresee the court's relationship with the executive and legislative branches?
Certainly. So I think for some of you that may not know, because sometimes judicial races don't get a lot of attention, the three of us here are sitting justices, and we are all going to still be on the court regardless of the chief race. And so we're running to be the chief justice. To my left, Mr. Martin is running to join the court as chief justice. So how I think the three of us approach cases is not going to change. I believe in strictly interpreting the Constitution and certainly in the separation of powers in each branch, staying in their role according to the Constitution and the articles and how we've assigned each. But this is us running to be the leader of the judiciary and the chief justice role in that. And we cannot do certain things and make reforms without the ability to work with the legislature and work with the executive branch. And I'm ready to do that. And the best example I can give you, and I mentioned earlier kind of briefly about this, but when I was on the trial bench, I saw that juveniles were coming into my court at 12, 13, 14 with drug problems. And there was not a single drug court for juveniles in the state of Arkansas. But the way our laws are set up, the legislature has to approve specialty courts and fund them, and then it goes to the Supreme Court to approve them within a judicial district. So I saw that need. I went down, testified in front of the legislature, and said, will you create juvenile drug courts in the state of Arkansas? Why are we waiting till these juveniles get 10, 12 years into an addiction, have an adult criminal record, and are incarcerated as an adults before we deal with their substance problem? And so that was me on the trial bench, going down, talking to the legislature, telling them the issues in the judiciary, what we needed, and laying the case in front of them, working with them. They established the first juvenile drug courts in the state of Arkansas. I'm sorry to Pulaski County, but we got the first one in Faulkner, I think, because that was, for me. But now there are 13 in the state of Arkansas. juvenile drug courts. But that's how the judiciary branch and a judge can work with the legislature, work with the executive branch, and because then the governor had to sign the legislation, and then it comes back to the Supreme Court to approve those specialty courts in the end. But you have to know how the system works and be able to work with them and them to respect you and listen to you and understand the needs. And so that's what I'll do as Chief Justice. And I've shown that I know how to do it. And so I'm just asking for you to give me that opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Justice Wood. We are moving on to questions from our audience this evening. Kind of going off of what you, Justice Wood, were saying in your answer to our previous question, I'd like to turn again to you, Justice Baker. Our first question from the audience, a member who wishes to remain anonymous. What are your thoughts on the state's drug policy and the drug court system in Arkansas?
I think it started kind of haphazardly and has grown into something that we can be proud of. I think it started by individual judges, like Justice Wood was saying she did, seeing a need and addressing that need, and it's grown into a program that we can be proud of. It's addressing a need that is out there in the community. And if you can address that need without incarceration, that's the best thing to do. So I think drug courts are important. I think it's important for adults and children. I've seen a lot of parents in difficult situations, and I think that drug courts can assist with that. Have any other thoughts about it?
Sure thing. Thank you, Justice Baker. Justice Wood.
So I think you know my stance on drug courts probably. And I think the biggest thing is that, there's several problems currently. Is one, the drug courts are not being administered pre-adjudication. So they're being done after sentencing. And the best way to deter them is to try to accommodate and do the drug court before the sentence has happened and before there's a plea. Because that gives them the biggest incentive. The second thing that's happening in Arkansas is there are no longer any substance abuse beds, inpatient facility beds for juveniles in the state of Arkansas. So back when I was on the trial bench, there used to be 50 to 60, and there are none in Arkansas. And so that is something that I've been working on, trying to work with DHS to get that and to get a Medicaid waiver, but there are zero. And so that is creating a tremendous difficulty, and juveniles are dying because of drug problems in the state of Arkansas, and there's nowhere to place them if they come into the court. The other thing is you can't just assume because someone is arrested with a large quantity of drugs that they have a problem and need to go in the drug court. So you have to assess them correctly. Conway may not appreciate this, but I always said the person that had the most drugs in Conway High when I was on the court didn't have a drug problem. He had a family socioeconomic problem. He would never use drugs, but he was dealing to pay for food to put on the table for his younger brothers and sisters. And so it's also making sure that we correctly assess and we don't put someone in a drug court and into that system and providing those resources if there's really something that we need to go and deal with socioeconomically with that family and get the family support. So I'm just passionate about it, and that's why I said juvenile is still one of my top 3 priorities that I want to keep working on if I'm blessed enough to be Chief Justice. If not, I'm still on the court and I'm going to keep working as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Justice Wood. Our final question from the audience this evening, then we will move on to our closing statements. And again, thank you all for being here this evening and answering our questions so candidly. Our question comes from audience member Pat Landis. Pat asks, when you envision your ideal Chief Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court, what are some of the characteristics of that Chief Justice? Justice Baker.
Over my 14 years on the court, I've learned a few things about how the court interacts with the public. And I think as Chief Justice, I have, and I think maybe it's a real contrast with Rhonda and Barbara working with our various committees. And I don't do as much of that. I'm concentrating on getting the bar exam given twice a year, making sure we're giving the correct bar exam, and working with the deans at the law schools, trying to address the problems and the COVID years, which were very difficult for the students in the schools. And I'm not sure they've recovered yet, but we need to keep going. What a specific question. What's the specific question?
Yes, ma'am. What are some of the characteristics of that you would like to see in a Chief Justice?
And it's someone that leads the court and interacts with the court and realizes that you preside and you overlook the administration, but you're not the head of the court, really. You preside, and you can't do anything without 4 votes on the court. So the Supreme Court is actually in charge of a lot of these things. And what I see for an ideal Chief Justice would be someone who represents the court well, that is not partisan, that is not labeled as partisan and seen by the public as partisan. I think conservative. And when I say conservative, I mean conservative in the legal sense. And that means paying attention to precedent, that we don't just throw precedent out and go off in another direction. So that's one. I need the characteristics to convince the public that there's no corruption, there's no bribery, there's no partisanship in the Supreme Court. The person that leads the court needs to demonstrate that, and I've tried to demonstrate that in my life. Talking to them out when I came in, they asked me to register or join the League of Women Voters, which I would love to be a member of the League of Women Voters, but I can't. And I would love to be a member of some of these other organizations. And I would love to head some of these committees if I had time. But I don't think there'll be time for that. I think that what there is time to delegate to other members of the court certain aspects and certain committees, and to be able to work with them and to recognize their strengths and how they apply. Work with every member of the court. These are not people with small egos. You get to 7 people in the room, and it takes a little while for them to work things out. And sometimes we don't get them worked out. And I think dissent is also a really important part of our process. But the Chief Justice cannot be the one that joins the League of Women Voters or that joins another partisan group or another group, or even the Arkansas Bar Association. I'm not a member of the Bar Association, and the reason I'm not is because they started filing lawsuits concerning matters that I had to rule on. And so I gave up my membership to the Bar Association. To remove myself from those things, from partisan activities. I haven't attended any partisan events, and I don't intend to, but I will represent the people of Arkansas well as the Chief Justice. That is my goal, to represent the people of Arkansas well in that role, and to represent the court. So those are the characteristics.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Justice Baker. Justice Wood?
So to me, I think you want someone in the Chief Justice role that is honest, has integrity, a little bit of tenaciousness, but a good listener, the ability to be a collaborator with others, and a hard worker and just a good public servant. And you put those qualities together, and that's what you want. And someone that will go out and do the public's work. And that's what I've always done. It takes a lot of characteristics and a lot of qualities in what you want as a leader, and so you put those together, and that's all the public wants from any of its servants, right? Is you just want someone that's ethical, that's going to work hard, collaborate with others, and listen. And so that's what I'll do as your Chief Justice.
All right, thank you, Justice Wood. And we will now move on to our closing statements from our candidates. Justice Baker, you are up first.
Oh, I didn't know we were doing closing statements, so that's good. I think I started with, I'm from Van Buren County. I've lived there all my life, and I go back there. That is home to me. I work in Little Rock, and partly I work with technology, as Barbara said, and partly I drive, commute. I think that's great, and I think the Chief Justice needs to be out and meeting the courts, the judges on the courts, and hearing their concerns, hearing what's wrong and what they want to address. I want to be there for that, and I think my experience with what has led up to the current court system, and I've worked at every level. I've worked at every level of the court system. So I'm so happy. I'm just so grateful. I'll just say that. In the last election, I was not well. I had to have surgery right before the election. And I had to depend on other people to campaign for me because I couldn't campaign. And it was lucky for me that I'd made so many friends over the state, and I had to ask a lot of my friends, and one of them was retired Justice Josephine Linker Hart. And if you know Josephine, she told me I had to run and had to win, and I had to have this job. And I said, not this job, but I had to have be a justice on the court. And I said, I don't either. I can cringe. And she told me I had to get up and keep going, and I did through the summer and was able to come back to the court. But what I would say is I'm just so grateful to the people of Arkansas. I've worked in the court system all my life, and I am so grateful for the experience I've had, and I'm so grateful to the voters in the last election for giving me 6 more years on the court, because I really need the insurance to keep going at least until I'm 65. And so so thankful to the voters of Arkansas for allowing me to do that. And I would be so thankful if they will allow me to serve you as Chief Justice.
All right. Thank you, Justice Baker. Justice Wood, your closing statement tonight.
So I've been honored to be your public servant and judge for 18 years. And like I said, it's been my deepest privilege serving in all 3 levels of the court system. I uniquely here have stood up and told you that I have been the leader. I have led 11 committees. I currently chair 3 committees. I have just walked the walk. So I'm not here to tell you this is what I would do as Chief Justice and that suddenly I'd start running all these committees. I'm here to tell you that as an Associate Justice, I've stepped up and done that. The Chief Justice has asked me over and over again to take over his committees, and I've willingly done that because I feel like that's my job as a public servant. And I know that the Chief Justice, I've worked with 3 of them, I know that there is tremendous responsibility in that role, and I do not take that lightly. But I also know that it is an incredible opportunity for the state of Arkansas. And times are changing, and I would just be honored to sort of take that opportunity and lead Arkansas to make some real reform in the system and really open the doors and ease the access and make it more citizen-friendly in our courts. And so I'm asking for your vote on March 5th. I would be honored, and I just also deeply appreciate you coming out here tonight, and I wish more citizens did that. But I thank you for your time, and I'd be honored to have your vote.
Thank you, Justice Wood. That does conclude our discussion this evening. I want to thank all of our, thank you to all of our candidates. These candidates have truly be going to all corners of Arkansas. So we are very thankful for making the time to speak with us here in Central Arkansas tonight. Want to also thank as well Little Rock Public Radio, the Central Arkansas Library System, and the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County for partnering with us. Shout out to them, of course. We will, just a note, we will be making a recording of this chat available on the Central Arkansas Library System's website. We will also be broadcasting an edited version of the conversation on Little Rock Public Radio, KUAR 89.1. That air date is to be announced, so keep an eye out for that. So for all of us here at Little Rock Public Radio, CALS, and the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, I'm Daniel Breen. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.